Hello everybody and welcome to a new episode of Languages of the World. Once again, we're here for another episode of English, and as usual, we've got lots and lots to talk about, but this episode is actually different because we're gonna have a conversation with a native speaker. I guess one of the privileges of studying a language is that you get to know other cultures, and there comes a time when you are lucky enough to be or to come across somebody, to meet somebody from that country that speaks the language you're learning and have a conversation. So I guess this is something that we all need to do when we're learning English, to practice it, and especially with a native speaker. Of course, it would be pretty much beneficial. Let me introduce you to my guest on this episode, Professor Daisy Fedyna. She's from Canada. I'd like to welcome you, Professor Daisy. Welcome to our program.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. You're a woman who's traveled around the world. You've been to different countries, of course, and you've just recently come back from Canada. So you had a nice vacation there, I guess. And I'd like to know about the Canadian cultures. It's a good opportunity for us today to be having you with us, so that we get to know much about this culture that is totally far away from us. So how would you describe Canada as a country?
Well, people ask what the Canadian culture is, and actually Canada is a blend of every culture, because we just celebrated 150 years of existence. 150 years, when you compare it to the pyramids or any of the things that are in Egypt, you can say it's like yesterday.
Yeah.
So our country is made up of so many cultures. My parents came from Ukraine. I was born in Canada. And then we have people from India, from Egypt, from all cultures.
Yeah.
So
do they live in communities over there, or are they,
blended?
like blended?
Mostly when they come, they stay in their own communities. I look at my parents, and they would stay. My father would only go to Ukrainian churches, Ukrainian gatherings. You'll see mosques. You'll see. So people go to what is familiar, and they want to also keep their culture. So I know, like in my household, my first language was actually Ukrainian, because my father wanted to preserve the culture of his home country. And I think most people who come try and keep the culture. So they will send their children to Hebrew schools. They'll send their children to Arabic schools to make sure that the culture stays, even though you might be in a country where everyone speaks English. What happens then is second generation, third generation, when you have them marrying different cultures.
Yeah.
So then you get the blend, and the blend.
Yeah. Okay, so can we describe Canada as a melting pot? And try first to tell us, explain to us, what is a melting pot?
Well, there are two ways of looking at culture. Some countries celebrate the fact that we're all different. Other countries expect you to blend in and become their country. I think like an American or other countries, adopt our language, adopt our culture, forget yours. We are lucky in Canada that we have days that celebrate multiculturalism, and we actually get funding from the government to preserve language. For example, in one of our regions, Alberta, the government pays to run the ethnic schools and pays for their books, because they realize that Canada is richer by helping people keep their culture, so that it's an interesting country rather than a bland one shoe fits all, right?
Yeah, okay. But it's a rich country, we can say so.
I think so. I think we expect it to be, we say it is tolerant of all cultures. And even if you look at our government now, we have a new Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau.
Yeah.
His cabinet, he specifically made reflective of the different people that live in Canada. So the cabinet is 50% women.
Really?
There's Sikh, there's Ukrainian, there's
Is
Jewish.
it meant, I mean, this quota, is it meant?
He had the choice of choosing, so from the people that were elected to his party, he specifically chose leaders, but that had those specific backgrounds, so that people in
Was he the first prime minister to
do that?
So?
Yes. I mean, the others would have a couple of this or a couple of that, but he specifically chose people that would represent all the different cultures in Canada, and I admire him for that.
Yeah, and of course that's why he's loved so much loved by women over there.
Well, he's loved for many reasons, including the fact he is actually a very intelligent and a very
handsome,
very handsome man, and very educated. So one time a reporter tried to catch him on something and said, "Oh, I'm sure you don't know the physics of whatever he was talking about," and he went on for 10 minutes describing the scientific background to what he was talking about. So he's quite an intelligent man. His father was Prime Minister of Canada at one point. So it is interesting, 30 years later to see the son become Prime Minister, and the same kind of avant-garde.
Perhaps he's the youngest Prime Minister ever to take office?
I think so. What I liked about him is the day after elections, he went down to the metro and shook hands with everyone going to work and said, thank you for electing me. Thank you for electing me. Now, not all of them certainly voted for them. My own brother is angry. He didn't really want him. He thinks he's too young. But I just like that fresh aspect and that kind of down-to-earth thing. He went and...
it's not easy to be a popular politician.
No, because there's the economy, and once the economy turns sour, it doesn't matter how good looking you are. If you don't have money, if you don't have a job, you are going to complain. Yes.
Yeah. All right, let's take a break.
Sure.
And watch something about Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, and we'll be back.
Video.
So that was a short biography about Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada. Actually, I guess Canada is not much involved, in the political arena. Why is that?
Well, we're a small country, but
small country?
Well, in terms of land, yes, we're a large country, but we're really around 45 million. So we're about half the population of Egypt. And so we don't have a strong army, or we don't have so no one is afraid of us. In fact, they use us mostly to be maybe go-betweens, negotiators, and as much as we don't like to say it, because we live next door to the U.S., then we expect the U.S. to defend us if anybody attacked us. And so maybe that is why we don't need to protect our borders ourselves so much. We share them with the U.S.
Is that also why Canada enjoys a lot of peace, unlike other countries, unlike its neighbor, the U.S.?
Well, there are many reasons for that. Canada has participated in some peacekeeping, but we have not been involved in as many, say, wars as, for example, the U.S. has. Maybe 20 wars since 1967. I was studying a little bit of history with my students, and perhaps that is why we aren't in everyone's face. We come to help as a peacemaker, or to support the large countries if we feel that that the cause is correct. So not many people hate us, I think. And so maybe that's why we're not targeted as much as the U.S. is and other countries.
All right. So you're, bordered by the U.S. Both Canada and the U.S. are neighbors. They are neighboring countries. Well, some people look at Canada and the U.S. as like one country. Is it like that? Is it really, true that Canada, to live in Canada is like to live in the U.S.? They are just separated by borders, but actually, they are the same.
As a Canadian patriotic person, I would obviously beg to differ and say we're distinct. However, if you drive across the border, then you'll see the same kind of stores, the same outlet malls, the same brand names, and in fact many Canadians, when it's cold in Canada, they go to Florida. In fact, my brother has a home in Florida.
Yeah.
That's where he spends 6 months of the year. So how Canadian is he?
So you don't feel much difference?
I don't feel much difference.
Ever been there to the U.S.?
Oh, I've been all across the U.S. And traveled from one coast to the other, and to Key West, which is my favorite, in Florida. But I wouldn't want to live there.
Yeah.
And and you can ask me why.
Yeah, sure, I'm going to ask you why.
I don't support perhaps many of their policies, and the fact that they're involved in so many wars. If I have a son, and that would worry me. And I think I like the multicultural flavor of Canada that I don't see so evident in the United States.
Yeah, this multicultural flavor, or the fact that Canada is a multicultural country, does this strip it of its national identity?
So, the national identity could be its multiculturalism. Really, because whenever we have a Canada Day, you have, the Ukrainian dancers performing, the Indian dancers performing. It's all celebrating Canada.
Yeah.
You don't have just the country.
Can we talk about the Canadian person and identify it from others? Identify,
without offending a whole bunch of other people.
Yeah.
Here's why Canadians are better. I think.
Let us say you meet somebody.
Yes.
All right. Can you say if they are Canadian or American, apart from the accent?
I think so. I think because we are a small country, we now you're asking me to speak on behalf of Canada, and I can't. I will just say that I don't think I can tell other countries what they should be doing, because we don't have the power, and we also don't have this, the history of involvement. So
life is more peaceful in Canada, I guess.
Well, we're such a big territory.
By peaceful here, I'm not talking about wars or tensions or anything.
Well, because we are not populated. Our country is huge. The population is all on the southern border. If you look at where the density is, whether it's Vancouver City, Toronto, Montreal, those are the large cities. And then after that, you look at Prince Edward Island. It only has 145,000 people. It's like Mahdi, and that's one whole territory.
Yeah. What about racism? For example, I guess the U.S. Is plagued with racism. What about Canada? I guess it's different. I don't know.
It's not that we're morally superior or anything. I think it's just, I know that when I was teaching in Canada, there was one black student in my class. So we have so few at that time that there couldn't be issues. But in the U.S., you look at the concentration of the number of different, by volume of people. And I think what's coming up is, it's sort of taking you off in a different direction, but I was reading about it, is that how you feel when you are outnumbered. There was a friend of mine, his mother told me she went to a conference in the U.S. And for the first time she went to the conference where there were very few white people at it, and it was all black people. And she said, I suddenly felt uncomfortable because the majority were not like me. Whether you go and it's all Mexicans or whether you go and it's all Spanish, if you are the minority, the lesser, you start feeling nervous. Because you feel more comfortable, psychologically speaking, you feel more comfortable with people who are exactly like you.
Yeah, sure. All right, let's stop for a while.
Sure.
And watch something about Canada, and we'll be back. So as you've just seen, I guess Canada is a very beautiful country, and I guess you're lucky to be, you know, from Canada, to have lived, you know, almost all your life over there.
Yes, well, all of my life, except for a year in China and 3 years here in Egypt.
Yeah, you've been here for 3 years.
This is my third year in Egypt, yes.
That's very nice. So tell me about Canada as a tourist destination. And during that video, you told me that you recognize all these places, so you must have gone around all over Canada.
Yes, we did that a few times because in order to understand how big Canada is, you actually have to drive across it from coast to coast, and that will take you, it took us about a week. A lot of driving, but you go from ocean to ocean. So it all depends what you want to do. If you want nature, which is what we're famous for, then it's our lakes, our mountains. In Ontario, if you just go a little bit north of...
Ontario is your hometown?
Is my home province.
Your province, of
yes,
course, yeah.
Of course. So Toronto has about 9 million people. But if you just go north about an hour and a half, then you start seeing the small lakes, which are crystal clear. You can go fishing in them. You can sleep under the stars. And that's when you see how clear the air is. When I was in China, we looked at air pollution, and my hometown had a pollution index of 45. At the same time, in Kunshan, which is just outside Shanghai, the pollution index was running around 300. So, which is, you keep the students inside, and you don't let them play outside. So the cleanliness of the air is what we enjoy there. I like the mountains, so I've gone to Banff and Jasper. Our mountains, they are different than in Switzerland, for example, because I found them more impressive because you're surrounded by these mountains, and they might only be 8,000 or 11,000 meters high, but when the Swiss are much higher, but they're far apart. And so you don't feel like you're surrounded by these mountains.
Is skiing a popular sport there?
Yes, it is. If you live close to the mountains, everybody skis. In Ontario, there are a few smaller. You know, I'm sure you're
skiing.
I used to go cross country skiing. Because downhill skiing isn't my thing, but because I did a lot of hiking and climbing, rock climbing and things, I like the cross-country skiing better, to get away from people, not go to a hill where there's lots of people.
I want to ask you about Ottawa. Of course, Ottawa is the capital of Canada. Is it much different in terms of the lifestyle from Ontario, where you come from?
Well, Ottawa is in Ontario, but how it differs from Toronto, you would think the capital city would be like Cairo. But it's not. It's about 500,000 people, maybe 750,000. I was just there this summer. And it's quieter, it's pretty, there's a river flowing through it, it's where our government is. but most people say if you want to party, you go to Montreal or you go to Toronto. It's not a bustling place.
Well, I'd like to show you some quotes now, and I want you to comment on them, all right?
Sure.
Let's watch them. Okay. The first one about hope, which anchors the soul. Yeah. What do you think?
Well, I think it's especially a hope anchor like in a boat, which holds the boat in place. So an anchor, hope would gives you something to live for, and so sometimes when things are tough, you have to hope that it's going to get better.
Yeah. Let's see another one.
Sure.
So this one says, hope is being able to see that there is light despite all of the darkness.
Which is by Desmond Tutu, yes? So, you know, sometimes when I see the pictures from Iraq, and I think those poor people, but they still have hope that things will turn out to be good and they will eventually get back to a good life. So if they didn't have hope, they just give up, wouldn't they?
So, hope means something in your life as well.
Of course, we all hope that something will be better, that our dreams will be fulfilled, that our children will be happy, that we will have enough money for everything. We all hope for something.
Yeah. Okay. Professor Daisy Fedyna, I'd like to thank you very much for being with us on this episode. It's been a pleasure having you with us.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
I hope that you've benefited from this episode. Actually, throughout the program, we bring you lots of educative stuff. Today is different because it's a practical way of actually dealing with a language. It's very important from time to time that you practice the language that you're learning, and I guess also it's also important to listen to conversations to see how people communicate so that you get to learn how to do the same. We'll be seeing you next week.